Imagine standing on a razor-thin plateau. Behind you is a sheer 100-foot plunge into the roaring, jagged rocks of the Yarmouk River Canyon. To your flanks, the earth fractures into impassable ravines. And marching straight toward you is a sea of iron and gold.
An empire has emptied its gates to destroy you. According to the classical chroniclers, you are a mere 40,000 men. Marching to meet you are 240,000 imperial soldiers of the Byzantine superpower, a 5-to-1 nightmare. The heavy cavalry alone outnumbers your entire force. If you step back, you fall to your death.
If your front line cracks, an entire civilization is erased from history. This wasn't a bad dream. This was August 636 AD.
A collision of worlds, where, by every law of military science, the early Muslim army should have been completely annihilated. Instead, over 6 days of absolute slaughter in the blinding desert heat, the Roman juggernaut was broken so thoroughly that its shattered fragments literally spilled over the cliffs. This is the raw, unpolished truth of Yarmouk, the ultimate gamble of Khalid ibn al-Walid. In Yarmouk, 2 men pulling the strings. In Constantinople, you have Emperor Heraclius. He's a brilliant strategist who had just crushed the Persian Empire. To understand the sheer scale of this madness, you have to look at the imperial war machine. Emperor Heraclius didn't just send an army, he mobilized a continent.
He sends an army of roughly 240,000 men under his top general, Vahan. He forged a massive coalition: Armenian heavy infantry, Slavic shock troops, and the fearsome Christian Arab cavalry of the Ghassanids. On the other side is Khalid ibn al-Walid. If you don't know his name, you should.
He is one of the few generals in human history to go completely undefeated in over 100 battles.
The Romans mistook Khalid's early movements. They thought it was a panicked retreat. He was pulling back into the dry, scorching plains. But Khalid wasn't running. He was measuring the earth. He deliberately lured this 250,000-strong army into a hyper-specific trap, the plain of Yarmouk. Look at the geography. It's a natural cage. To the south and west are the deep, vertical ravines of the Yarmouk and Alan rivers. And east, the only escape route. By positioning himself here, Khalid forced the Romans to face him with their backs to the ravines.
The Romans looked at the map and smiled, thinking they had pinned the Muslims against the abyss.
They didn't realize that by packing their massive, bulky formations into this tight space, their sheer size would become their own executioner. They had just walked into a cage with a tiger.
August 15. The sun rises and the heat surges past 100 degrees. The battle opens not with a skirmish, but with a tectonic crash.
Vahan sends his heavy infantry to smash the Muslim lines. Day 1 is a testing of nerves. Day 2 becomes a crisis. The Byzantine strategy is a relentless iron tide. For the first 2 days, the Roman heavy infantry uses its sheer mass to crush the Muslim left flank. The Byzantine right flank shatters the Muslim left. The lines break. Hundreds of Muslim soldiers begin fleeing back toward their camp.
But waiting in those camps was the wives of the soldiers, stood at the tents. They didn't weep. They grabbed heavy wooden tent poles, sharp rocks,
and began beating their own fleeing husbands. They screamed across the dunes,
"If you run from the infidels, you are no longer men to us!"
Driven by the ultimate choice between death in battle or absolute dishonor at home, the soldiers turned around and threw themselves back into the meat grinder. To save the line, Khalid releases his ultimate weapon, the mobile guard, 4,000 elite, hyper-aggressive cavalrymen. Like a tactical strike team, Khalid leads them directly through the thick dust storms, slamming into the Roman breakthroughs. butchering the vanguard and vanishing before the heavy Imperial legions can rotate to face him.
Day 4 opens with a crushing Imperial onslaught. At dawn, General Vahan unleashes his heavy infantry, brutally fracturing the Muslim right flank and driving panicked forces back to the camps.
Once more, the women at the camp push them back into the fight. The lines are holding, but they are bleeding out.
To halt the Roman momentum, Khalid deploys a brilliant psychological ruse.
He ordered his riders to loop behind the desert hills to make a few hundred men look like thousands.
He uses his cavalry as a phantom army to simulate endless reinforcements.
The deception works flawlessly. Scanning the horizon, the Byzantine commanders see the massive rising walls of dust and freeze their advance, terrified of being flanked by fresh, unwearied forces. But the illusion cannot last forever. Realizing he has been brilliantly deceived and his decisive breakthrough stalled by mere dust, an infuriated General Vahan orders a ruthless, total retaliation. Vahan orders his Armenian horse archers to rain total devastation. Thousands of arrows darken the sky. History records this horrific afternoon as the Day of Lost Eyes. In a matter of minutes, a relentless storm of Imperial iron pierces the flesh of over 700 Muslim soldiers.
Despite being instantly blinded by the flying steel, hundreds of warriors refuse to drop their weapons.
Exhausted by the phantom reinforcements, bleeding from the ferocious counterattacks, and physically spent by the brutal 100-degree heat, the Roman momentum grinds to a sudden, bleeding halt.
Vahan looks across the battlefield and believes victory is only hours away. Confident the Muslim army is breaking, he sends a herald under a white flag,
offering a truce and a conditional escape. Any other general would have taken it. Khalid looks at the Roman messenger, his armor caked in blood and sand, and spits. "We are not tired. Tomorrow, we attack." On the night of the 5th day, the battlefield goes dead silent. The Romans are physically spent, their morale cracked, by an army that simply refuses to die. And this is where Khalid proves why he is a legend. He notices a fatal operational flaw. The Roman cavalry has drifted away from their infantry lines to rest.
In the dead of night, while the Imperial camp sleeps, Khalid detaches a phantom unit of 500 horsemen under the terrifying commander Dirar ibn al-Azwar.
They slip through the blackness of the ravines with a single objective: capture the Ruqad Bridge. This narrow stone bridge is the only escape route over the 100-foot canyons behind the Byzantine army. In total silence, Dirar's men neutralize the guards. Khalid has just locked the exit from the outside. Day 6 arrives, and the desert itself takes a side. A violent, blinding dust storm kicks up, blowing directly into the faces of the Romans. Khalid doesn't wait. He shifts his entire army to a massive iron fist. He charged his full cavalry force, driving a wedge directly between the Roman horsemen and their infantry. The Byzantine cavalry is forced off the field, fleeing into the haze. The vast Roman infantry is left completely exposed, blinded by the screaming sand, and relentlessly hammered from behind by Khalid's charging horsemen.
Panic transforms the Imperial army into a stampede. Driven by raw terror,
The massive crowd flees toward their only hope of survival,
the Ruqad Bridge. But as the dust clears, they see Dirar's 500 men holding the bridge, swords drawn.
The exit is gone. Behind them is Khalid's unstoppable cavalry. Below them is the abyss. In the blinding, screaming chaos, thousands of Roman soldiers, weighed down by chainmail and shields, lose their footing. The crowd behind them pushes forward, and men begin pouring over the cliffs by the thousands, crashing onto the rocks below. The Grand Army of Constantinople is utterly annihilated. When the news reached Antioch, Emperor Heraclius did not raise another army. The treasury was empty. His finest legions were gone. He boarded a ship bound for Constantinople. He looked back at the fading mountains of the Levant and fell into silence.
Yarmouk wasn't just a battle. It was a geopolitical earthquake. It broke the back of antiquity's greatest superpower, permanently altering the borders of the Christian and Islamic worlds and establishing a legacy of tactical thinking still studied in military academies today.
History honors the empires with the grandest monuments and the deepest gold reserves, but Yarmouk stands as an eternal, bloody reminder.
When you underestimate an opponent's spirit, misread the terrain, and rely on sheer numbers over tactical brilliance, the desert will swallow you whole. The desert has spoken, and the map of the world is rewritten forever. But the saga of history's greatest empires is far from over.
If you have the steel to witness the rise and fall of legend genius, this is Kings and Conquerors, and our next campaign is about to begin.